Joining us today is Bill O'Reilly, a prominent conservative talk show host, political commentator, and 18 times New York Times bestselling author. He hosted the O'Reilly Factor, the top-rated cable news program, for over 20 years. And now he hosts No Spin News. And it's a great show. You can also check him out at BillO'Reilly.com. Bill, welcome, and thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me in, Rebecca.
Bill, I must admit, you've been one of my favorite conservative influencers for so many years now. It is such an honor to have you here with me today. Bill, you've been involved in mainstream news media for almost 50 years. And for those who are really paying attention to the news, distrust towards mainstream media seems higher than ever. So many outlets have been exposed for either furthering stories that were fabricated or taken out of context. And other important stories have been intentionally ignored or labeled as false by the so-called fact checkers. For example, our members know that the Hunter laptop is real, and we know that many on the left knew and did nothing to stop the Russia collusion hoax. My question for you, sir, is when did journalistic integrity, that is the ethics of journalism, like truth and accuracy, when did that all fall by the wayside? And what kind of impact do you think that this has on we, the people in America as a whole?
Well, I'm partially responsible for the collapse of the so-called traditional journalism industry. In 1996, when we started Fox News Channel, there was no opinion on television per se. Once in a while, you'd have a commentator on, I remember NBC used to have John Chancellor come on once in a while, but they didn't do it on a regular basis. So when the 24-hour cable networks went up, I was there at Fox, and I did an opinion show, kind of like an op-ed in a newspaper. It was so profitable, Rebecca. It made so much money, billions and billions of dollars, that the corporations took notice of that. And instead of, vetting their commentators and trying to get people who really had experience like I did, I worked for 2 network news operations as a correspondent. I had a long resume. They threw people on who are irresponsible and who are ideologues. I'm not an ideologue. You say that I'm conservative in some things, but not in everything. I try to be very precise in what I say. So once the corporations got when they could make billions with a B of dollars through a news presentation, all standards collapsed. And they started putting in people who were charlatans and who would say anything for a buck. And that just it just spiraled down after that. And then when Donald Trump came on the scene, it blew up. So the corporate media hated him so much, personal hatred toward him. They were willing to, as you rightly pointed out, overlook good stories, be dishonest about things like Russian collusion, not investigate anything that might help Donald Trump. And so Americans started to catch on that the fix was in. Now, that has helped me because of my independent news agency, of which we are happy to have AMAC as a sponsor. I don't do any of that. I just tell you what we believe and why we believe it, present facts to back it up. So I've gotten hundreds of thousands of subscribers to BillO'Reilly.com, and our audience now is in the millions worldwide because people know that I'm not going to play the ideological card. So we're living in an age now of propaganda. And if you turn on the television set, if you read most newspapers, you're not getting the truth. And again, that helps me because I try to lay it out there in a very, very truthful manner.
Yeah, very important. And there certainly is a hunger for what you're delivering. Now, sir, you are a friend of President Trump's, but you've also been, in my view, unbiased in your coverage and analysis of all topics, including him. I want to speak to the indictments. Now, in America, we are innocent until proven guilty. That's a fundamental right in America, at least it seems until now. Today, we have anti-Trump groups who are determined to disqualify him for president, and they're urging state election officials across the U.S. to remove Donald Trump from the ballot, claiming he is an insurrectionist. They're citing an arcane clause in the 14th Amendment written after the Civil War that disqualifies anyone who engaged in insurrection against the United States from holding public office. But here's the hitch. Trump has never been convicted of insurrection. The House of Representatives impeached him, accusing him of insurrection, but he was acquitted. So we have 0 convictions and 1 acquittal. Under this scheme, if Trump wants to be on the ballot, it seems he'll have to go to court and prove his innocence. So in short, Bill, guilty until proven innocent? That's very un-American, in my opinion. Whether you like Trump or not, shouldn't everyone in America be very concerned?
Sure. I mean, look, there is no due process in the corporate media anymore. Any allegation is a conviction, and we see that every day. I have a book, Killing the Witches, coming out September 26th about the witch hunts, the actual witch hunts in Salem. But then I take the book into present day, where people aren't being hanged anymore, but their lives are being destroyed on allegations. As far as the Trump situation is concerned, these states are not going to be able to do what they're trying to do. It's all about publicity and trying to downgrade Trump more. The Constitution clearly states that an insurrection charge must be proven in a court of law, not in the House of Representatives or in the Senate under impeachment banner. So you can only be disqualified if you're convicted of treason or if you're convicted of sedition, as the Proud Boy guy was this week, and sentenced to 22 years in prison. If you are not convicted in a criminal court of law, then you can't keep anybody off any ballot. All right. So that's a bunch of nonsense. It won't happen. The Supreme Court would step in very, very fast. And that's all is going to help Trump even more, which is an interesting story in itself. The more they try to keep Donald Trump off the ballot, the more Americans who are not committed to Trump, who are independents, are going, I don't like this. So I'm going to vote for Trump because I don't like this. And but I'm not worried about this as far as it actually coming about. The interesting thing about this is the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, has brought charges against Trump for election interference in D.C., and the Mar-a-Lago documents case, could have charged Trump with insurrection and wanted to desperately. But there's no evidence to back it up, so he didn't. And that tells you everything.
Very, very interesting. Now, AMAC members have a couple of questions for you. They are big fans. One of them that came through a couple of times here is they're curious, where does the Biden administration rank in terms of presidential administrations, which you've covered over the last many decades? Is it as bad as it looks, they ask? And do you believe that there might be more to the Biden crime family than really meets the eye, because we're learning more and more each day?
Okay, so let me answer the second part of that question first. Due process, again. So a lot of conservatives and anti-Biden people have convicted Joe Biden of bribery. I'm not going to do that. That would be irresponsible of me. I will tell you this, there are more damning pieces of evidence coming forth this fall. This is not going to be a good autumn for Joe Biden. September, October, early November, the House committees investigating him and Hunter and Jim Biden, his brother, are going to produce even more evidence that Joe Biden profited from all of this influence selling. Now, whether that's enough to bring in an impeachment or in a criminal sense, the Justice Department's not going to charge Joe Biden with anything, no matter how much evidence there is. And that, again, shows you the corruption of our federal government now. Now, in the big picture, Joe Biden, in my opinion, it's only an opinion, but it's an educated one, is the second worst president in the history of our country. James Buchanan, the guy before Lincoln, is the worst because he allowed the South to violently disobey federal law, and pretty much fait accompli. When Lincoln walked in, there was going to be a civil war, and Buchanan did absolutely nothing to stop it. So you're not going to come close to him. But Joe Biden's failure is across the board, and it's fairly catastrophic in 3 areas. And this is all you need to know, okay? Number one, real wages. People who are in AMAC and, have to buy food and gas, everybody. All right, real wages under Biden, more than 2.5 years, are down 5%. So he can give you any mumbo-jumbo propaganda he wants. That's in stone, real wages. Under Trump in those 4 years, and that was COVID, and Biden had a little COVID too, Trump real wages were up 9%. So it's a 14% swing to the downside on spending power and security for the American people. That's devastating. Okay. Number two, the border. 8 million migrants at least have crossed into this country, and they're largely unsupervised because of the open border policy of Joe Biden. It's a catastrophe. And now the Democratic cities are going crazy, as everybody knows. Third thing is civil disorder. If you live in a city, you can see it with your own eyes. LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, St. Louis, Baltimore, Chicago. Criminals are running wild because of the progressive movement, which has Joe Biden in its pocket. So those three alone put him into a category that, I mean, we've had bad presidents in this country. Martin Van Buren, Warren Harding, and these were bad presidents. But this guy, Biden, he's doing a lot of damage. The only thing that he can point to under his administration is that unemployment has stayed low. Otherwise, it's been a disaster.
Sure has. Bill, earlier this summer when you were interviewed, you stated, I believe, that you think that there's no way that Joe Biden is mounting a reelection bid. Do you still feel that way today? What indicators make you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was one of the first that said Biden was not going to run in 2024. Number one, his poll numbers are sinking. Now they're in the mid 30s. Number two, 70% of the American people feel the country's heading in the wrong direction. Those are catastrophic numbers that the corporate media, which favors still to this day Biden, they can't massage those numbers. All right, so the country has turned against Joe Biden. And number two, he obviously cannot do the day-to-day job, Rebecca.
Yeah.
He's just incapable of it. And we see it every single day. On the No Spin News on BillO'Reilly.com, we give out Biden's schedule every day. He's never have anything on the schedule. All he does is prepare remarks. He doesn't deal with the press, doesn't take questions, forgets people's names, doesn't know where he is. I mean, is this what we want for the next cycle, presidential cycle? A guy who doesn't know where he is? So you combine the two, and the Democratic Party knows it, by the way, and they desperately want Michelle Obama to come in. And so far, there's no indication that the former First Lady will do that. But if tomorrow Michelle Obama picked up the phone and said, yeah, I'd like to be president, Biden be out of there the next day.
Interesting. Yeah. It is so interesting. I have two more questions from AMAC members. The first here is a great question from a gal, Janice Winchester, and she said, "Thank you, Bill, for giving us real facts in your broadcasts each day. It is because of you that I joined AMAC, and now I'm a volunteer delegate for AMAC Action." Thank you again for talking about AMAC on your show. But Bill, her question is, what do you think would be the most important thing for President Trump to accomplish that might enable him to win the general election in 2024? That's from Janice, AMAC member.
First of all, I appreciate AMAC. I mean, we've been with you guys for a long time, and I always say good things about you, and I would not do that if I felt there was a deficit in the organization. But compared to the others, I think you offer really a lot of good things for the folks, particularly in the health insurance area. Now, Donald Trump, in my opinion, I've told him this face to face, needs to change his demeanor a little bit. So he's a former president, and he's got to run on his record rather than get in fights with everybody. Americans are weary of that. They're tired of that. They know about fake news now. They know the fix is in the Justice Department. They know all of this. All right. What Donald Trump should do on the campaign trail, in my humble opinion, is tout what he did in office. All right, so the Remain in Mexico policy at the border cut illegal immigration about 75%. Okay, he revamped the military. There was not social disorder in his 4 years like there is now. Inflation ran about, what, 1.6% under Trump? So those are the things that he should be pounding day in and day out rather than these petty feuds where everybody knows now. So that's my advice to him.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, and we do hope he takes it. Bill, you have so many fans, and I've always been a great fan, I said earlier, and you've got two new books one that's been out, Killing the Legends, The Lethal Danger of Celebrity, but your latest book, Killing the Witches, which you've mentioned. Tell us a little bit about both of these books.
Okay, so Legends is basically a book about icons in America, even though John Lennon was a Brit. You got Elvis, you got Lennon, you got Muhammad Ali, and how they lost control of their lives. And they all, their demise was tied into that loss of control. So it's an interesting story on all three levels, but it's also a personal book for people. Look, no matter how prosperous you are, how powerful and rich you get, you got to watch it. People are going to betray you. All three of these men were betrayed. All right. And so it's a cautionary tale. Killing the Witch is an interesting book, Rebecca, and I'm going to have my people send it to you right after this interview. Comes out September 26th. It's about the 20 people who were executed in Salem, Massachusetts for allegedly being witches. And when you read the evidence, which that was crazy, whole thing was insane. It was mass hysteria. But because it happened, it influenced the U.S. Constitution. And so we get into that. Benjamin Franklin was a Bostonian. He saw this Salem thing as a child. It stuck in his mind, and we get into that. And then the final part of the book is demon possession today in America. There's a religious note to it. But what we did was we investigated the movie The Exorcist, the original movie, and the stuff that happened on that set. It was incredible. And it's based on a real story. We tracked down the real kid who was possessed, and we got all the information about him. So it's really three books in one. And I think when people read it, their head's going to snap back because people don't know any of this. This is all new stuff. A lot of people knew about Elvis. They knew about Ali and Lennon. Killing the Witches, every page, you're going to go, whoa. So we're very optimistic that's going to be a big bestseller.
I'm not a huge fan of horror. And so if it means I'm going to have to keep my lights on at night, Bill,
You're going to have to keep your
I
lights on. For the first third of the book is very scary. And the last 50 pages, it's scary. I'm not going to mislead you.
But it's truthful. There's a spiritual war, I think,
it all
right happening in front of us. And I think that people ought to be aware of the truth and what's happened over centuries ago and how that impacts our Constitution today. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Bill, I have one final question before we let you go, and this is from an AMAC member. And this question came up 5 different times. This is from a gal, Deborah, and she says, Bill, what can we actually do right now to stop the demonic insanities trying to take over America right now besides pray?
Well, it's all about local for the folks. You get involved with your local community. Maybe you run for the school board, or you sign on to help a candidate you feel reflects your value system. It's local. So if everybody did that across the country, then it would change the tenor. And people feel helpless, but they're really not. So your town, your county needs you. And there are many, many places where you can go in and help. And so that's why I direct everybody into the smaller places, because once you get into the Congress and Senate, I mean, you don't have much of a voice, but you do have a voice in your own area, and you can make your voice be heard there. And that's what folks should do, what they'll have to do to stop this crazy progressive trend.
Very good advice. And I always remind our members, start at home, right at the kitchen table with your own family, your own children. Bill, this was a true honor. I thank you so much for joining us today. And we just so appreciate your perspective. And I know our over 2 million AMAC members do too. I hope to have you back on. And when I do, Bill, I will have read that book. So we can talk more about the books. But until then, God bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to talk with you, and we'll do it again soon.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.